Producing one of Salt Lake City's popular podcasts is one of my personal favorite projects. So much so that it has quickly skyrocketed to be one of my most important. And I'm going to tell you all about how I produce the Singletrack right now. Okay, first things first. What is the Singletrack? You guys have maybe seen in some of my previous videos me mention this magical thing called the Singletrack. It's actually the podcast that's produced by Tamayo Creative, and as of recently, Finn has legitimately hired me to be his producer. Not just that, but the technical title would be the creative director for all of the Singletrack podcast, which is honestly really exciting and kind of an honor considering the fact that this is something that I would really like the direction of my career to go into. Finn is somebody that you guys have met before. He is one of my closest friends. I lived with the guy for about 6 months. We're practically brothers, to be completely honest. And we actually talk about that in one of the Singletrack episodes, which I will link to below in the description. In that podcast, we talk about the growth of the Singletrack, where we're going, how we're going to expand it, what kind of mediums we're going to put it on, because we would really like that podcast to be accessible to everybody at the tips of their fingers in the most convenient way that they find, whether that's being on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, which seem to all three be the most popular forms of media consumption nowadays. And it's my job to get short little bits of each one of those podcast videos, sound bits, whatever it might be, on every single one of those mediums. Finn is part of the Tamayo Creative team. He was actually the guy that I brought on to be my marketing director, and actually still is the guy who titles and even hashtags all the videos that we post on this channel. However, his podcast that I produce is more popular than this channel by kind of a long shot, to be honest. It went from having a couple hundred listeners per podcast to now having over 1,000 for each one. We're about 15 episodes in on the show, but he has done an incredible job of securing some unbelievable guests. I mean, anything from our close friend Grayson Murphy, which we actually did publish that video here on the Tamayo Creative channel, all the way to the founder and CEO of Strava, which is a humongous social media platform for runners and can even be considered a running log for everyone. What he's looking for on this podcast is the business side of ultra running and trail running, and how we can help as a community spread the word and really help the business grow. As both of us, as you can hear on the podcast that he and I talked about, which is called The State of the Singletrack, we discussed that runners don't really get enough love. Runners in every aspect of the sport, whether it's track and field, it could be the trail running scene, it could be marathon running. We discuss how if you're not an Olympian, you don't really get paid well. And unless you're incredibly sponsored and have a ton of followers on social media, you're not really going to be considered for any sort of sponsorship whatsoever. So the podcast goes over the business side of the trail and ultra scene. And Finn does a really good job of asking very intuitive questions for every single one of his guests, in which they answer in great detail. Actually, as somebody who hasn't really been super into the trail scene just yet, he asks some questions that even I'm like, I really kind of want to know the answer to that myself. Anyway, you guys should definitely go check it out. If you're into activity, if you're into outdoors, if you're into ultra running and trail running, that podcast is fantastic, and it really gives you a behind-the-scenes look on exactly how that industry is growing. And Finn does a great job. He's incredible at what he does, and honestly, I'm honored that he picked me to be his creative director. Now, what else do I do for this podcast? We had an original thumbnail style that we sort of took as an idea from another ultra and trail running podcast. We have recently changed that to a different format of the thumbnail, and I'll show it to you right here. It's really simple, just kind of a squared off design, a minimal design, but I kind of wanted to more so highlight the person as opposed to the color scheme of the logo, because the logo is going to grow eventually too. Not just that, but we're going to be changing the icon on the Spotify and Apple Podcasts playlist as well. Right now, you see the beautiful logo that Brent Handa made, who you guys have also met in some previous videos. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a much cleaner, much more minimal design icon that I actually stole the idea from the Jon Stewart podcast. So it's going to be very similar to that if you are familiar with the podcast that Jon Stewart currently has. My biggest thing on editing these podcasts is actually sound editing. Now, granted, you see this microphone that I'm using. It's the Shure SM7B. It's the best microphone I think that you can buy for a podcast, honestly, for even singing, if you're into that. I will actually link the video to the review of this mic that I did right up here in the corner, so you can check it out if you'd like. This is the podcast mic that you will hear if you access the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And while it does an incredible job, I still do have to edit some noise out every once in a while. So what I do is I go into Adobe Audition and get a noise print first, and then I apply that to the entire sound bit that Finn sends me, from the intro to the body and to the outro, get rid of all the noise. And what I will also do is I will make a separate video on this detailing exactly my process for editing, cleaning up sound, cutting little bits, as well as even putting the intro and outro music into the podcast as well. That is a big part of it. Finn got a great backing track that we put to the intro and the outro of the podcast, and I can show you guys exactly how you fade that in and fade it out for the intro and the outro. It's a great addition, and I think the song that he picked was awesome, and it gives a little bit of that extra flair to the podcast. Now, I do have a few other projects going on. I'm going to make a couple other videos on exactly what those partnerships are. Specifically, I was recently hired on at Wealthy Records, which is an entertainment company in Charlotte, North Carolina, as well as being a graphic designer for the Around the Crown 10K hosted by one of my really good friends, Brian Mister. Shout out, Brian, if you're watching this video, and I will definitely make some separate videos on that. But what I wanted to touch base on today was exactly how I manage this with a busy schedule. We do have the NCAA championships with the University of Utah cross-country teams this weekend. We will be back Sunday afternoon, but sometimes with that busy schedule, I still got to fit the podcast in. So sometimes it's literally done here at work because I actually have a little bit of quiet time. Yeah. I do it anywhere that I possibly can. The great thing about editing on a MacBook is that the speakers are pretty good. I will also link the review of this MacBook Pro, which is now up to 1,700 views, which I'm really happy about, up here in the corner so you can check it out as well. The speakers are great from the highs to the lows. The bass is pretty solid. It has great control, and it does a great job of, when I don't have headphones, of really describing what my sound is going to sound like in the final product. I do all the production, I do all the video editing, and all the videos that you have seen on this channel, from the Dylan Bowman episode to the Grayson Murphy episode. Not only am I doing all the thumbnails and the sound editing, but right now this studio, as you can tell from previous videos, I've moved it around a little bit. In a fun addition to this studio room, I've added soundproof panels to the ceiling, which I will show you right now, and that has really increased the sound quality that these mics already bring to the table. There's way less noise, it's super quiet in this room, and actually for the Finn and Grayson video, and even the Finn and Grayson podcast, I had to do way less noise editing than I ever have before. It was a great addition to that, and right now this is the Singletrack Podcast studio as well as the Tamayo Creative studio, and we love utilizing the space that we were given. You guys should check it out. If you haven't already, I'm here to super plug this podcast, and it's huge for us. We're getting thousands of listeners an episode, and we're really excited to see that keep growing. I will definitely also include our State of the Singletrack episodes. Me and Finn are going to check in once a month with each other on exactly how the business is growing. But the fact that his podcast is bigger than this YouTube channel already is awesome, and I love watching him succeed. We're looking for the highest quality of people. I definitely know he is. That guy literally cold emails people on a daily basis just to get guests, and he does not disappoint when he comes through. But we're investing in quality of the guests, but we're also investing in quality of the sound. We want these to sound great. Please feel free to leave a comment below if you enjoyed the video, if you checked out the podcast. And also, if you guys do enjoy the podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I don't think there's a place to review on Spotify if I'm thinking about it, but Apple does have that. And Finn does a great job. He asks really inquisitive questions. It's actually one of my favorite things to do if I have a long drive. Get up super early in the morning, pour myself some coffee, hop in the car, listen to a podcast, and enjoy the ride. Thanks so much for watching this video. We're really excited about continuing to ride out this train and see where it goes as we build something from the ground up. You guys have been awesome watching these. You guys have been awesome listening. It's the reason why Finn has gotten a sponsorship offer. It's the reason why we keep growing in listeners, and we really appreciate the love and support from all of our friends. And guys, reach out. Shoot me a text if you have my number. Shoot me an email. I would also love to produce other podcasts if that's something that other people are interested in. It is one of my favorite things to do. And if editing sound and video is one of your least favorite things to do, I am your guy. Well, guys, either way, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as it helps us out here at Tamayo Creative as well. And we will definitely be catching you guys in the next one. See ya.